And so it's just something that I'm really excited about and really passionate about. And I could talk to you for hours. I could tell you story after story of students whose lives have been changed. It's not because I sit down with them over coffee. It's not because I invite them over for pancakes. It's because God's mercy is new every morning. One of the things that I've been reading, I started reading Romans. And Paul at the very beginning of his book says, I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ. And he goes on to talk about how it is the righteousness of God for everyone who believes. And after 5 years on campus of hearing person after person after person shut out Christ, it's been hard for me to think that there are people on KU's campus that desperately, not just need, but want Jesus, want something bigger than themselves, want their lives to be transformed. Mm-hmm. And so part of this next year is the Lord softening not only their hearts, but my heart, to know that there are people on KU's campus, a campus of 30,000 people, who not just need, but desperately want their lives to be transformed by Jesus. And so another thing real quick, we aim to do that in 3 different ways of meeting people where they're at: winning students to Christ, building them up in their relationships with Christ and other people in community, and sending them out. One of the outreaches we get to do that while in grad school and student teaching and leading Greek Impact, they decided to put me in charge of. I don't really know, other than I was just really excited about it. It's called Story of the Soul. And the tagline of it is that the soul is trying to say something, what do you hear? And just using different media pieces, different classics, and linking them to a common theme. And at the end, having an explicit gospel presentation and an invitation to receive Christ. Because we live in such a media-saturated culture that unfortunately people are more likely to come down from their bedrooms if they hear a loud explosion on the TV than if they hear people just talking. So that's part of meeting students where they're at. But not sugarcoating the gospel, not trying to make it sound cool in a postmodern world, but having them discuss things that are going on in their life and explain to them how Christ can come in. And so the one we did in April was identity. And being the one in charge of it, I got to stand up in front of 40 people and explain the gospel of Christ and how Christ came and died so that we could have a permanent identity in the family of God. And so my hope for this outreach is that we would be able to have that for 2 times for the entire campus and once a month for the fraternity and sorority students. And other things that we get to do is just having mentorship relationships. These girls that I've mentioned, among other girls, meeting with them, just talking with them, hanging out, and pointing them towards Christ. I'm not a counselor, but pointing them towards one that heals. And also sending students out. I told you about George. I told you about Austin. There are countless others who are out in the workforce. We don't want everyone to come back and work for Campus Crusade for Christ. We want people to be called to where they're at. Knowing that whether you're a barista or a teacher or a rocket scientist or a lawyer or a full-time missionary, that there is ministry wherever that is, and helping students understand that. So those are some of the things that we get to do. And I will stop there. And just, if I have a couple minutes, if anybody has any questions. Also, yeah.
Do you ever work with Bible Study Fellowship?
We don't on campus. I'm not sure. I don't know where one would be in Lawrence, but would love to find more out
Are
about
you
that.
familiar with that group at all?
And that's all that I've, yeah.
Well, my son and his wife did not go to KU. My husband and I did, but they went to Stanford, California, and it was campus, not Campus Crusade, it was InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. My son, there were 5 people in his dorm that were going to that, and they invited him, and then they told him about a church, which happened to be a vineyard, and so he really came in. There's just a massive, I can't tell you the whole story, but there's just incredible, massive things about him coming to Christ. And then my daughter-in-law, her rowing coach at Stanford, led her to the Lord.
Yeah.
So you just don't know what kind of, and they're both deeply Christian now.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I do it.
Right.
My fiance, someone knocked on his door his freshman year with Campus Crusade for Christ and led him to the Lord. Yeah, so we feel really strongly about outreach to students.
When you do a Bible study in the fraternity or sorority, what study materials do you use?
Well, that's a great question because we haven't had an opportunity to do a Bible study in the last 4 years that I've been on campus in sororities. So we've used Campus Crusade for Christ has a lot of really great materials. For the discussion forum, which is different than a Bible study, we'll be using the story of the soul and things along with that. Would love any input if you have, because you mentioned Bible study fellowship. So yeah, the answer is I don't know.
I went to Bible study fellowship this past year, and we covered the book of Isaiah, which some people find kind of hard to tackle. But I noticed that their materials take every opportunity to show God's loving interaction with people. Whenever they're talking about characters in the Bible, they present kind of a, they present a very solid evidence of God's love for people and His belief in the goodness of people. And I would recommend that study material if you need some, but you have to get registered as a teacher or something to do that. So maybe your Campus Crusade materials are sufficient, whatever you already have.
Yep.
I wish you well.
Rachel, I have a question.
Yeah.
How are you funded to go do these things?
Yeah. Wow, that's a leading question. The reality of what I'm doing is that everyone from Steve Douglas, our president, down to me, the little old intern, raises financial support. It's all on the same pay scale, and that's the way Bill and Vonette Bright started it in 1951. They set up a model of trusting in the Lord and trusting that He would bring funds, but actively pursuing relationships with people. And so what I've been doing this summer is that I've been asking concerned individuals and churches if they would partner with me to minister to students on campus. And it's not just a give and take, a take and take. It's a give and a take. I'm not only starting relationships with students on campus, I'm starting relationships with people who decide to be my ministry partners. And so there are 3 things that I think that are really important about that. The first is that I will work diligently to reach and touch the lives of students for Christ. And the second is that I will inform the people who are my ministry partners of how the Lord is working on campus. That's through prayer letters, that's through emails, that's through dropping by at church or, chatting on the phone. And also to share prayer concerns with one another. Currently I have about 65 people or couples on my ministry partner team. And I'm still collecting prayer requests from them. But the ones that I do have, it's not just about me giving out prayer requests, but it's about me taking them in. And that's something the Lord has really taught me this summer and convicted me of, is if you tell someone you're going to pray for them, don't say it and not mean it.
Right, that's right.
You say it, you pray for them right then, and as the Lord continues to bring them to mind, you pray for those things and whatever the Lord lays on your heart for them.
Yes.
And so, I can't say that I pray for 100 people every single day, but I can say that I pray for them as the Lord brings them to mind. And so, just being vulnerable and honest, and if that's something that the Lord lays on your heart, whether that's prayer support, whether that's financial support, I'm not going to stand up here and ask specifically. I will sit at the back, and if that's something the Lord lays on your heart, would love to talk with you more about that. But that is part of the reality of where I'm at. But it's been really, I've met people whose faith has blown my mind this summer. I've met people who have pointed me more towards the Lord than I ever really thought could be possible in the midst of raising financial support. Have seen not just finances come in, but been praying for a new pair of running shoes and had a brand new pair of Nikes handed to me today. It's just like, I told somebody today, I said, everyone within a 20-mile radius knows that I'm raising financial support, but God's the only one that knew I needed a new pair of running shoes. So, yeah, it's a really cool opportunity that I have, not just being on campus, but this part too. So,
you really have an important job because you're working with youth, and that's our future.
That's right.
As a suggestion, I just got out of college not too long ago myself. In one of my classes I took, it was a psychology class, and they discussed the Bible, and David, the minister, spoke last week on dreams. I think you might want to get him sometime to talk about dreams to your youth, because what they're doing, they're discussing dreams as disconnected images that we receive instead of being from the Lord. And everything that we read in the Bible leads us back to the Lord. And the dreams were given to Moses and different prophets down through the ages. So the youth really need to know this difference. But hang in there. I think you're doing a great job.
I really appreciate her who takes a 5-year degree, and instead of taking her 5-year degree and her school loans and to go get a career to make money, she's decided to stay in the mission field of academia. And that's something I think that is worthy of supporting. And so I would say that if the Lord speaks to you to do a one-time donation, do you have a 501c3 not-for-profit?
Yep.
You can write the check directly to their 501c3 and you can get with her at the end. You can write it to our ministry, which is a 501c3, and dollar for dollar, you know, everything that's directed gets right to the person. You know that. And so if you want to get on a monthly support, $1 a day, $30 a month, that really makes a difference. 5-year degree, and she decides to stay there to minister Jesus to the people. That's significant.
Yeah, praise
Thank you.
God.